Hi, and welcome to Geography Geeks with Mr. Mercer. In this episode, we're going to look at inner city areas using a map. You'll be asked to describe an inner city environment and possibly give reasons for the features that you find. Don't forget to use map evidence, worth at least 2 marks to you in a question such as this. As always, I recommend starting with street pattern, as it's the easiest thing to identify. The street pattern that you can clearly see here is a gridiron street pattern. The reason for there being a gridiron street pattern is to make best use of the space. Due to the close proximity to the CBD, the inner city's land value will be higher, and therefore you want to make best use of the land area. This is an industrial area, and therefore the local factories at the time of their construction would have wanted there to be a local workforce close by. That workforce wouldn't have had access to their own cars, so they needed to be within walking distance of those factories. So once again, a crammed, narrow, gridiron street pattern makes sense. To provide the large workforce as well, the houses would have been very small and crammed together, known as terraced houses. And these would have provided just enough living space for factory workers, allowing a larger workforce to be fitted into a small area. Now I've got several marks of explanation there out of one observation, that there's a gridiron street pattern with terraced houses. Now, house type is the next thing that you should mention. In England or Wales, you should refer to terraced houses. In Scotland, you may refer to tenement houses. Make sure that you don't get the two mixed up. The next thing to always go for once you've mentioned street pattern and once you've mentioned building type would be transport infrastructure. There is a road, there is a railway, and another road. Don't just mention these out of context. You need to give some explanation really, so you want to say that the B3238, remember you can use the name of a road instead of a grid reference, provides access for residents to the CBD. The railway, you could suggest, is evidence of this area's old industrial past. Further evidence for that fact might be found here, where there are some large buildings, which could be factories or warehouses, and areas of open space, which might be old industrial sites or brownfield sites. Take care not to go too far down the path of talking about industrial land use. We are not interested in why factories might have located here, flat land, room for expansion, etc. Remember to stick to talking about the residential urban environment. Once you've talked about street pattern, building type, and transportation, then it's time to talk about the services in the area. It's tempting to refer to hospitals, libraries, and schools. However, hospitals aren't really a feature of the inner city, and libraries and schools are a fairly common feature across the map, so I would avoid talking about those as well. The best and most reliable feature to talk about would be a concentration of churches. Now on this map I have 3 churches. One here, one here, and one here. Now, by grid referencing each of those, I can call that a concentration. You must use the term concentration of churches. And you really want to go into some detail about why that's relevant. The reason being that at the time of construction, this largely very concentrated workforce would have been more religiously observant. Therefore, more churches would have been necessary. In a more modern suburban environment, as you'll see, there aren't as many churches because society has changed. So we've talked about the services now. Now what you can do is you can score additional marks by talking about the wider environment of the inner city. Inferring from the map is quite a useful skill here. For example, the narrow streets would not have been designed for modern transport, and therefore we can expect this area to be congested. We can expect this area to have problems with parking, as it was never designed to have cars in the first place. We can expect this area to be polluted, Always specify your pollution type. Noise pollution would be a problem, perhaps from cars on old cobbled streets. Notice that I can't see any actual cobbles on this map, but I'm inferring from the narrow streets and from my wider knowledge of what these environments look like, I can describe and give some explanation as to what this residential environment might be like. The old industrial past can help you here as well, because it explains the lack of open space as all land would have been used, the lack of recreational facilities as the main reason for these areas was to pack in the workforce, and it would also perhaps mean that this might be a smoke-blackened environment. If you can find evidence that the local industries have collapsed, you could also suggest that this area may experience above average levels of unemployment, and therefore the environment might be scruffy. Always focusing on how the residential environment looks, however, is the focus. And you really want to start off with the easiest map work features and then progress to talking about the wider environment. Okay, I hope that's helped. If you've got any questions, come and find me in class.